Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to the third episode of Digital Government Excellence Symposium presented by PayIt. This is the only place on the web for continued education of government service delivery leaders on the web. I'm Nadia Davis. I lead public sector marketing here at PayIt, and I will moderate this event today. Over the last 2 weeks, we explored different topics that related to digital government service delivery. We started with taking an overview of the 2023 most pertinent trends that took place. And we also elaborated on what those trends will look like next year in 2024. We all agreed that the importance of single resident identity, where you can do multiple things with one login, was paramount to state and local governments. We also explored the importance of providing digital access in an equitable manner, removing digital barriers so that we can serve all residents within our communities equitably. Today, we'll continue building on that conversation, and we will explore where do you go from there? Say you're convinced and converted. Say you want to make a meaningful difference for your residents and provide them with delightful digital government interactions and experiences. But how do you start? How do you know what to hedge for in the future? You may not know what you don't know. So we are here today to address all of these questions. And I have Jack Laskowitz, VP of Client Success here at PayIt, and Adam Jensen, who is Senior Solution Engineer, who will help us drive this discussion and answer these questions. Jack, Adam, welcome to the show. Thank you for finding time. Always a pleasure to have you. So Jack, I hear that we had a buyer's guide that got published that answered many of the things that we will discuss today. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, of course. So a few months ago, actually earlier this year, PayIt produced the buyer's guide. And by the way, for those attending this session, that is available in the handout section, which I think is this way. Anyways, it's on the side somewhere. You'll find it. The section's marked handouts. But the buyer's guide was really designed to help a lot of agencies who are wanting to drive these surprisingly easy, delightful experiences for the residents, and they don't really know where to start. I mean, the last thing they could do is they'd say, okay, well, we did a procurement 4 or 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and guess what? That event probably is not what you're looking for today, or what the agencies we worked with were looking for at the time, and they needed help. So they needed a way to figure out what to look for. And that was just a common question and a common concern that we've seen all over North America, frankly. And so we said, okay, well, let's produce this buyer's guide to serve as a tool. This is an asset for any agency to use, that they can look through that and say, well, what are the questions we need to ask, and then how do we best evaluate these vendors? And so there you go. So that's the reason we have this buyer's guide. And Nadia, what we did, I thought it was a really great conversation. What we did was we had a conversation with 3 different leaders from various functions from around the U.S. at the time, talk about their journey. They're all obviously PayIt clients, since we love being partners with them. But what I want the folks here to do as you're engaged in this session is think a little bit about the journey that they went on, the things that they were thinking about, the questions that they asked, to help you in your experience, whether you're thinking about something in the future, whether you're going through an evaluation right now, or you've just wrapped one up and got to do some lessons learned for the next iteration. I want to introduce them. You'll hear from them. They did a great job. So you've got Todd Shanley. He's the CIO of Cabarrus County, North Carolina. Todd does a wonderful job. He does a really nice job thinking about all the different relationships and tools and assets that they use in the county. John Glebensky, he's a city treasurer in Grand Rapids, been working with us for a long time up in Michigan. And John has a really nice point of view in terms of what the impacts of a great digital experience can have throughout the organization, and then that snowball effect. And then Mike Hammond, clerk of the court in Knox County, Tennessee. And when we did have this discussion, I think they had just launched like 2 days prior, a day prior. So you'll actually hear from somebody who had literally just gone through that journey. So a really nice array of folks that I'm excited to get it started and let you all hear from them. And we'll get started with John Glebensky in Grand Rapids.
Thanks, Jack. As City Treasurer in Grand Rapids, Michigan, we launched this initiative back in 2016 and actually signed on with PayIt in 2017. And we took our four main services between water, property tax, refuse, and parking tickets. And that was our big launch. That was our big lift. That was 80% of what we typically take in payments in the city. And since that time, we've been iterative. We found out ways to adapt and add more services. So we've added a couple different receivables software programs. We've added community development block grants. And really, it's methodically trying to challenge ourselves to say what's next. So we're talking about delinquent taxes now, and then we're also exploring options like in Mike Hammond's world is how can we envelop the court system? So really, it's once you get started, it becomes that snowball effect. And what more can I deliver for my community?
Cool. Thank you, John. So we'll go over then to Mike Hammond down in Knox County, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Basically, what we do in my office is we keep the record and we collect the funds. That's very basic. I have three offices. I have criminal sessions, and Fourth Circuit, which we would refer to as our family court. One of the reasons why we wanted to go with PayIt was we had an antiquated system. When you're dealing with government funds, as my colleagues will tell you, it's very important that you get it right. As I tell our people, there's one thing, well, really there's two things that can get me ousted from office. One is public drunkenness, which is in our state constitution, by the way. And the second thing is misappropriation of public funds. So getting it right and making sure that those funds are properly accounted for is extremely important. And so as we looked at the system that we had and we looked at where we wanted to go, there was no question that we needed to up our game, so to speak. We needed to increase our level of reporting. We needed to make things more efficient for our constituents and for the people rather than coming downtown to pay, make it easier for them to pay online. And just making it easier for them to pay their court costs. As my colleagues will tell you, if we were selling license plates, people would come in and pay their fee and get a license plate and leave. That's not the way it is in the criminal court system. People come in and we will not know what their charges are until they come out of court. And depending on what those charges are is how we assess the fees and the fines and the forfeitures and so forth. So there's a lot of figuring that has to go on behind the scenes. There's a lot of things involved in the court system that you do not have in the other government offices. And we were looking for a system that would help us do that in a more efficient manner. I will tell you that we have been live with PayIt now for a day and a half. And so far, things are going well.
Clerk Hammond, that's great. And thanks for joining us. I mean, so we've got already John Globensky that's been using PayIt services now for, going on 6 years. And 36 hours. So you've got, I think that the benefit's going to be, and Todd will ask you to introduce you in a second, but the benefit's going to be today for our webinar. We're hearing from folks that have been through several cycles and folks that are just getting started in their first cycle. So I think you'll get a really good perspective on, what's it like at the very beginning? What's it like, as you've gone through for a number of turns here. Okay, Todd, I'll go over to you in the great state of North Carolina.
Thank you. So I'm Todd Chandler, I'm the CIO here at Cabarrus. I run the enterprise IT environment. So the goal for us is to treat every department like they're our customers. I tell people all the time that we run it as much like a small business as possible, or a managed service provider. So when we talk about partnering and things like that, or I'll reference partners and customers, and that's usually a department on our side. So. And then vendors, we want them to be as much a partner as anybody else, in all of our processes. So we were taking online payments, but we were using a vendor and not a partner. So trying to, targeting a group like PayIt, when we saw the success they had here in North Carolina with the state and the DMV system, I personally was using it to renew my tag with the chatbot, and that innovation and that level of, thing was something that we really wanted for our constituents here in Cabarrus. So we jumped on the PayIt bandwagon pretty quickly, and it's been a fun ride already.
Cool. This is a great group. I'm excited. Like, again, different perspectives. So I expect that as an audience member and someone that's attending this webinar, I'm optimistic and confident that you're gonna find something you can relate to from a local government standpoint. And just if you bear with me for a moment or two more, I want to give you a bit of a buyer's guide refresher. So this is that document I referred to. And across the top here, these 4 sections are the topics we're going to discuss today. So it's finding that champion to champion the cause of modernization, somebody that will help you bring about that change and move from an idea to action in your department or your agency. Identifying and creating the right requirements for technology vendors. I mean, it's no surprise that not every vendor is created equal. And what you want to think about is, when we talk about in the guide, is finding that vendor and having the idea of what you want in a vendor that will go where you're trying to go, which may be different than where you've come from or where a particular vendor has been with you in the past. The third item is user experience driving adoption. And one of the things that I mean by that is, especially in an experience with an integrated payment, it's one way to just say, hey, I've got a digital payment option for you, but it's another one to have an experience that encourages digital adoption. That's where your residents actually choose to go use that online channel because it is the best one for them. And mostly, especially during the pandemic, a lot of us got really used to doing things from our smartphones and doing things from our computers, and a lot of folks aren't going back because they've found that, gosh, this is a lot easier for me to do than to spend a half a day taking a trip down to a particular office or phoning in or mailing different paperwork. Finally, the technical must-haves. At the end of the day, a lot of this is technology and identifying ways and things that are important to the method and the manner in which the technology is delivered is important. I think of that as, and I know Todd does too, that's the iceberg that's below the water. How things are really structured. Those are the things that really tend to matter in terms of what's going to be easier for you in the long run, what's going to be more efficient for you in the long run, or efficient for you to implement at the beginning. So those are the 4 topics we'll go through, and it's really not one topic that's going to rule the day in terms of driving modernization and driving that digital transformation that we know you want to do in your department or agency, but rather these topics all coming together. And that's one of the reasons why we put together that buyer's guide, is to help you think about and help you put together your approach. And so that when you do invest that time and energy around driving that initiative, your chances of success are as high as they possibly can be. Okay. Now, again, I'm going to walk through each of these topics, and we're going to drive some discussion here. So the first one is championing that modernization. And the points we've got is, you've got to identify that person, maybe it's you, to be that driver of excitement around the impact of changing that resident experience, the best thing there. And we think the best combo is that excitement plus the authority to drive those purchasing decisions, someone that can really drive that change. And so with that, Clerk Mike Hammond, I'm going to start with you. You've obviously had the most recent change of those services. Like, how did that get championed at Knox County? What were some of the factors that got this from a wish to reality?
Well, I must tell you that I was elected to this office in 2014. I came from the private sector, and when I came into the office, I was shocked at how far behind we were. Not only from our credit card processing and all of that, but just basic things in the office. Some of our people were still using typewriters. I know that sounds strange, but that was true. We had people in the office that had been here for 30 years or more, and they were not used to technology, did not want technology. And so we really had to change a culture so that we could do that. We had people who would come to our counters, for example. They couldn't understand why they could go to Walmart and get a transaction done and get it done quickly. And they would come to our counter and it seemed like it would take forever. And so we knew that we needed to do some modernization. We had a company that we were using when I came on board. And so we were trying to work with them to get the things that we felt we needed. Quite frankly, we didn't feel like that they were delivering what we felt we needed to have to serve our constituents. And so we started looking at what our options were. I will tell you, I had not heard of PayIt. but as it was presented to me from our finance people and from others, and as we looked at your background and as we looked at your track record, we became more and more intrigued with the idea of, okay, what if we brought them on board for the court clerk's office? We met with your folks, came in, impressed with what you had to offer. We felt like that this was a way that we needed to go. We, of course, in government, we have procurement processes we have to go through, but we also found that we really didn't need to go through that because of contracts that you all have existing across the state of Tennessee. So basically, we were able to piggyback on some of those, which saved us a lot of time once we had made the decision. My office in Knox County is a little unique across the state in that we are what we call a true fee office. And that is, I'm responsible for all of our expenses. Knox County gives us money for basic operation, such as copy paper, toner, copy machines, that type of thing. But when it comes to salaries and benefits and the retirement program, I'm responsible for every penny. So therefore, every dollar that we collect is important to us. And I emphasize every dollar. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't leaving any money on the table, that we were able to get an efficient system that would help us with those collection efforts, but to also make it easier for our constituents to be able to pay online rather than stand in line and having to come down here or, whatever they needed to do to get those payments. And so I think PayIt started, we did the contract, and I believe the PayIt started maybe in October. We had weekly meetings. I think you all were on site maybe a half a dozen times, making sure that things were going smoothly. And so as a result, we went live yesterday. And so when you ask who is championing it, not only myself, but our entire staff, things were very clunky. It was taking forever to do reconciliations. Our reporting process took forever. And so the people in our finance office on our 6th floor were constantly saying, hey, when are you going to get us this report? When are you going to get us that report? And we say, we're trying, we're doing the best we can. Our system's antiquated. So they were all behind us getting a brand new system. And so I think it was a collective effort on all of our parts because we recognized that something had to be done to make things more efficient, to make it better, and to also serve our citizens. Because as I told you before, they think they can go to Walmart or Target or somewhere and they can, but yet they come to the courthouse and they're government, and it's like government ain't working for us as well as it should.
Yeah, well said. So it brings it, I think you told me once before, it's like it brings it into the 21st century. And
that's right.
So they're expecting that. It's easy to meet them where they're at. Todd, I'll go over to you. So there's, especially with a technology provider, there's an IT role to be played in championing a change like that. How does that get championed, from your point of view, and how does that partnership work between, what some folks would say the business and IT?
So as a CIO, I'm always excited about a new change or something like that. So, we're constantly wanting to do a new project or run towards something that's, bright and shiny. But without the department on board, it's really just us, rocking somebody's boat that didn't, was happy with the way it was working. So we really have to work with those line units, those departments, or our partners or customers, as we like to call them. So we don't bring that department along with us, we can champion it or jump up and down and say, hey, look at this chatbot and look at this cool tech that this will do. If we don't get them on board early, the project's just not going to be a success. So PayIt did a great job with that. I think that I think about the team that we implemented. So I felt like it was yesterday. In the group that you guys have and how I've watched them all move up through the company. I just kind of laugh now that I'm like, hey, that was my person. So they did such a great job with us trying to really come in and be that partner. This isn't a PayIt story, but I force myself to tell it all the time because one of the things that as an IT professional that drives me crazy is we have vendors come in and they want to tell the customer or the department, hey, this project's so great or so easy, you don't have to have IT. And it's a two-way street. So the department really needs to make sure that they're partnering with their IT group to get that done. And I know in some jurisdictions that's music to their ears because they may not have that reliable IT department to work with or what have you, or they have, there's hurdles or, roadblocks. But in my office, that's a red flag every single time. So I was really pleased that the PayIt methodology and outlook was really to really, get our tax administrator on board and the tax collector. You talk to them almost as more or as much as they reach out to us. I mean, we had to partner and talk about tech a lot, but without that partnership, the project wouldn't have been a success. But now that I'm bought in, you don't have just that one silo of, okay, we're here in the tax office. Now that we're hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we're going to implement PayIt as another function for another department, and then another, and then another, and then move point of sale, and so there's a lot of opportunities once you have that synergy or that partnership that you're talking about, or that champion that's kind of taking the project and then going, oh well, doesn't that fit over here, versus that single silo. So I think that's just been my experience in the 26 years I've been here. I've seen them good and bad. They all end up working out, but it's just how much bleeding do you do on the way there.
Yeah. There's a part in the guide that talks about find a place to start, and find a place to start that's meaningful. I think that some folks tend to go to let's go to a really low risk, very small piece, but the time it takes to get that done, it hasn't made a material difference. I know you three have done is let's go make a difference in one spot and then start adding on. John and I were talking about that just a little while ago. Todd, if you don't mind, I just want to do a quick follow-up to something you said in the sort of the talk track around you don't need IT. I mean, and you clearly haven't heard that from us, but
no. I always hesitate to say it, to the wrong group, but it is my pet peeve, so I try to say it often as possible.
I think though that it's an important point where, for the different departments, your customers, and in terms of championing a change like this, they've got you're a key partner in this. So it's either something that comes from IT or it comes to IT. And I think that sometimes there's a common fear from an IT professional standpoint that a provider or a vendor or a partner like PayIt could be a threat to the existence of IT, even if it's not said. What advice would you give the folks that are on this webinar to say that's not really the case, but the way in which it should be positioned would be as what? Oh,
I think it's an extension of our team. I look at it. So I came here. We were a very small group. It was it was probably 15 or less people here 26 years ago in the IT department, and now we're almost 40 people, and we still don't have enough people to get all of that work done. So if you don't embrace that and work with somebody, then you're just going to continue to be doing it. And I don't care. I have great programmers. I put my team up against anybody in the country, private or otherwise. I think they're an amazing team, but there's only so many hours in a day. So we won't get to that innovation step without that investment of working with a partner like a PayIt or any of the other folks we've worked with through the years. You guys you're gonna focus on that best of breed and deliver payment. And then like the clerk was saying, there's a whole lot of threat when you start talking about dollars and everything else that we don't want to. I get a little antsy when we start talking about credit card payments and things like that. So being able to partner with a group that this is their core function, and they can help us develop a better product at the end of the day.
So we talk about define what you need from a technology vendor, and it's so important to understand kind of what it is generally you want. I wouldn't say you don't need to have the entire recipe for what you want, but what are the things that are important? And when we talk about in the guide, think of things like composability. It's easy for a lot of software companies to say, well, for the right time and money, we'll build you whatever you want. But rather there are aspects of speed and I'd say economics that make what we call composability and a very appealing factor and something that should be considered. Composability meaning like taking a platform and it's configurable in a way that says, oh yeah, you've got your requirements, great. This platform, it just needs to be, this toggled over here, this toggled over here, this phrase needs to say this thing. Yeah, so that's an important function. It's something that you have to decide that's important to you. And then there's a trade-off, from an integration and connectivity standpoint. Open APIs, application programming interface, or a walled garden. Is it important to you that everything is in one space, but you may be limited in what you can access or get, or you want to make a change? Gosh, it might be a little bit more expensive for you. Or we want to do the flexibility. I would say from a PayIt standpoint, we are subscribers to the open API movement, if you will, to say like, yeah, we'll connect to those things. And then finally, at the end of the day, it's a people business. And even if we're thinking of technology vendors, really it's important to consider the team that will serve your agency. Is that a team? Is it 1-800 number? What is that? And so those are some key components or requirements to be thinking. So with that setup, Todd, I'll stick with you for a minute. You've seen the evolution of technology for a long time. You said 26 years. What do you think about in terms of the build versus buy versus configure, compose, if you will, the new term?
I wrote in my notes about customizable or configurable is usually the buzzword that we get stuck on. Again, going back to the beginning, when I first got here, it was all Unix servers and mainframe. So yeah, everything was custom written. So there was an expectation from my customers that we can do anything and it'll work exactly like they had this ability to say, well, we wanted to do this and put in that request and it happens. So there's a lot of good from that, but it's not sustainable. So we made an effort, I want to say it's been years and years ago now, 15, 20 years ago, that when Windows really kind of took over the environment, that we were going off the shelf. So we buy customizable applications that we can partner with, make sure there's some success, do as much of the vetting. And, that I can only imagine with that, if I go back through my notes with the list of questions I would ask partners back then versus what I'm worried about now. Did I care about an API, that long ago? It probably wasn't even on my list. It was just, which brand of Windows does it run on? So there was a lot of that we worried about, but cybersecurity and that API that you're talking about is really the window for us. If we don't have an API, that conversation pretty much, as we were talking about a minute ago, stops at that one project. Knowing that there's an ability to stretch this to my building inspection application or the landfill or somewhere else like that, we've got all these disparate off-the-shelf applications. As much as, I tell people all the time in local government that we manage, 15, 25 different lines of business. There's folks that work in retail and they have one ERP and there's one kind of stream of what's going on in that piece. But in local government, there's these 25 different departments who have 25 different goals and they have different software, and a couple of them have many of them have different software on everything. So that's the challenge. And then then you bring in a PayIt to enhance what's going on with that. I mean, there's plenty of partners who they have their own payment gateway or something like that, but is it that best of breed, and does it check all the boxes that we want it to be able to do? And I think that's how we've been successful in the last couple of years is really finding those partnerships and bringing them together. You guys didn't know our tax provider when you met them, but my team worked on the API with your team, and we really there was a lot of success in that, and we're really proud of it.
Yeah, same. I want to switch gears a little bit and go over, John, I want to go over to you and on this last bullet point in terms of the people aspect. Technology at the end of the day, at least as of today, for the most part, is still being created and evolved by people. how does one evaluate that with potential vendors?
I think when we looked at it, we have our situation. Everybody's organizations will be slightly different. We're not going to all have a large team of IT. We're going to have maybe some that are all contracted. When we started this project, we had one IT director, and everybody else was contracted. And so when we are looking at the key requirements for tech vendors, when we were actually doing our RFP search, we had a lot of the major players. The difference is that they had 1,000 to 2,000 customers, and so we identified a key requirement was that we wanted a partner to walk with us. I don't have dedicated IT resources that I can spend the money on to bring people in and get us up to speed. And so that was where we really settled on our award, was the fact that I have a person who's going to help me understand my data, how to extract the data, provide it in a reasonable fashion, utilize minimal IT resources to make sure that we can set this up, make it configurable so it can be executed overnight, and use APIs where we can use APIs. If I've got other backend systems that I can't connect, then what can be delivered to me in an importable file that takes my team a couple minutes to import a massive amount of payments at the very next day. And really it was understanding with each business unit, because when we did our RFP, I invited the 4 different departments and their key players to walk with me through the process. And I was the primary champion, along with our 311 director, as we were redesigning our website and looking at our platform to work within our community to accept payments and to process this type of work. We identified that 86% of people touching our website wanted information about a bill or to pay a bill. And so that just screamed volumes within your organization to recognize that it's not about the agenda minutes that they're attached getting to your website to read. It's how do I transact business with the organization? And so really it was starting to talk about that relationship is not, it's not a commodity. As we're going and putting these requirements out there for tech vendors, it's not a commodity. You're not buying salt, milk, and eggs, and that everybody has salt, milk, and eggs. You're buying, and you're investing in this relationship, and that's the key for us when we're working with a technology vendor. Is are you listening to us? Are you hearing what we're asking? Are you explaining to us and helping us understand and walk with you through the entire process? And so that really is what is critical in my mind, because I'm not a technology person. I'm a person who sits on the other side of the computer going, is it easy for me to transact business? And can I think of my 82-year-old father doing the same thing? Can I think of my 28-year-old daughter doing the same thing? And how do they actually interact with us? And so that's why I say we're talking about it. It's at the end of the day, it's the client representatives, it's the client managers, it's the support folks that are on the other end of the phone, they're on the other end of the email, that are actually walking with you as you design the process, you set it up, you go through the process like Mike has done, where now he's got his team there. They're just live right now, a day and a half in. And it's uplifting the entire organization to have that all hands on deck. Let's be prepared. And really, it has to be that strategic partnership. I want somebody to walk by my side and to be there, that I want to bring to my presentations. I want to bring to my city commission to say, look at what we've been able to accomplish. And it's that relationship that each of the background program, the background PayIt platform, is the same for all of us. We haven't customized anything. It's simply a configuration. The language that both Todd and Mike use and their chatbots is going to be slightly different than mine, because Midwest might be different than Southeast, might be different than Middle South. And so you have to be prepared for that. But that's on us. And that's on us. That's what we do. That's what us as a city has done to recognize how the bot is language and conversation goes with our community, but also we test the product. We test every type of thing that we've done, every integration or every new tool we've added, every new option that's come out. My team invests the time to script and test everything. That's where our value is to this. We trust PayIt with the back-end solution, but we need that strategic partner to walk with us, teach us, help us understand, and actually we both become better because we're giving PayIt what ifs and they're giving us, you can do this or a better solution. And so it's that two-way street to have that feedback and how we can present ideas and actually grow together.
Okay, we're going to keep moving on. Got 2 more topics in 20 minutes. So we're right on time. It's great. So then the third topic that we talked about is that user experience driving adoption. So option versus adoption was as the component here. Our panelists here have already used some of these terms about making it simple, easy to use services. That's a little tiny arrow that goes up. So there's actually was a Deloitte study that said a positive, easy to use or simple digital experience with a government agency had created a level of trust between that resident and that agency multiples higher than a difficult digital experience. Making it effective doesn't just stop at the resident, but actually effective and efficient, Mike, I think you were using that term earlier, for the agency is the other benefit. So it's really a two-sided coin here. And really the equation includes both. And then finally, we talk about reducing your risk by shifting online. And so a lot of folks here would probably cringe at the PCI, right? The PCI burden and the PCI risk. I mean, that is, Todd's nodding his head. He's like, yeah, there's a lot to it. And identifying a vendor that can take on that risk on your behalf, really, one, it shifts the risk and it reduces risk for the agency, and is really, I think, placed in the right spot. So with all that said, John, I'm going to stick with you. And, City of Grand Rapids has many, you talked about them, services that have, we've seen several cycles to see the impact of the user experience. So when you're thinking of simple, what does simple look and feel like beyond just concept?
When we talk about simple, when we actually went through the whole engagement stage, we actually asked people within our community to test drive the product before we actually rolled it out. And so we used your staging environment. We created our conversation. We set up test scripts. And we actually asked people to kick the tires. We were asking community members to participate. We had a 1,600 person user testing group. We didn't use all of them, but about 800 actually participated. And we gave them specific scripts, and we sat back and we watched how they interacted. And they would comment on different things. They might not like a word. They might think it's not as simple or could be simpler. The key is that you sit back and you listen. Accept their feedback. Everyone's going to have a different level of IT comfort, but we want to make sure that this is usable by the vast majority of our population. And be prepared to make changes. Be prepared to be flexible and adjust and shift, and report that progress back. I mean, we were giving $5 gift cards to local businesses in our community for people that participated and helped us out as a thank you for your time to help us build the best possible user experience and product. Reach out to your neighborhood associations or local colleges that can actually have, maybe that could be an easy student project to help them test what's easy for your group. And theirs is not just the payments, but they're saying, hey, how do I create something that's for daycare and parks and rec signups that might not be fee-based? That's what a technology partner does. That's what a strategic partner does, is how can I build that same thing into the product offering? Because I'm sure that in the parks and rec, or I'm sure that in daycare and parks and rec, somebody has to create a user account. And with that user account, you have specific data that you're going to collect. And so, this is where your strategic partner is going to say, hey, I think I know it doesn't accept a payment, but maybe there's a really easy way for us to help you navigate getting these people to do that work online under the same single sign-on, single platform that PayIt offers. I know the primary business is to connect people with property taxes, parking tickets, court costs, revenues, but you can develop this into other things. And that's what's so important about having that strategic partnership, is that what value is that to your organization and to your community to make that efficient and effective, to help people sign up for those classes so it's not a burden, and to get their child into daycare. And that's the value of this type of partnership.
Well said. And John, you mentioned before, you didn't launch all those things at one time. You started with a handful and then grew it, which you're now seeing those dividends paying back because of the scale. And frankly, I know you're not done. So there's plenty to do in Grand Rapids. I know that. I'm going to switch over to Clerk Mike Hammond. As you mentioned before, you've recent transition. Just in terms of the simple experience, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but what would you say you're expecting, and what are you most excited about with respect to this change?
Well, we're excited about the fact it works. We started back in October, and almost from day one, we got our people involved here locally. Our people at the counter, all of our finance people who dealt with the public, people who handled money. And we started a process of what would you like to see from this system? What are you hearing from people? And so we made a list. And as we met with the folks from PayIt, they had ideas, of course, with best practices. And we talked with them about, okay, here's what we would like to see from a system. Here's what we think we need. We were never told, no, we can't do that. You do it this way, or, you'll do it this way and you'll like it. They never did that. They said, okay, let's see if we can make this work. And they did. And so what excites us about this system is that we can do recurring payments. Now, I know my colleagues are saying, what? You couldn't do recurring? No, we couldn't do recurring payments with the system we had. And that's important for us, because in the criminal court system, once they get out of this building, we may not find them again. They may move, who knows? And so once we get them here, if we can get a good email address, a good credit card, and set up a payment plan, and we can set it up to where every month we know we're going to get X number of dollars, it's easy for them, it's easy for us. We couldn't do that. The other thing that we couldn't do was give them balances. So let's say they were to go online and they were to say, well, how much do I owe? The system we had would not show them that. And so they would call and they would say, well, how much do I owe? Well, we'd have to go into the system and try to figure it out. Under this system, they know what they owe. It's right there. And so that has a huge, huge benefit for us. The other thing, of course, is, as I mentioned, our reporting. We're able to come in at the end of the day, at the end of the month. Of course, we've only had one day, but it's working very well. And we're also getting email confirmations, which we could not do before. And so now when people yesterday came in and did a transaction on the PayIt system, they're getting an email confirmation. All of those things excite us because we couldn't do that before. And, most people have been doing that for a long time. And so now the fact that we are able to do that and provide that service, I think is just huge. And you talked about creating trust in your governmental office. I think that goes a long way because people can see their balance, they know what they've paid, they get a receipt, etc., and it's easy and it's quick. And so we started yesterday with the online service. We're going to move that over to our phone operators and our frontline clerks, and all of the training that has been done by the folks at PayIt has huge dividends. And there's going to be more training. They're not stopping. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons why, there were several reasons why we wanted to go with PayIt. But when I saw that this is your 20th anniversary and you're serving 80 million people, that says to me that PayIt's going to be here a while. And so a man of my advancing years is not going to be in this office forever, but I feel comfortable that when I vacate this office, my predecessors will come in and they're going to have a system that will be updated with the latest technology, the latest business practices. They're going to listen to us if we decide that, hey, we need something else on this system. Can you do it for us? We feel like they're going to work with us to do that. I just can't say enough about the technical support and just the support we've gotten from everybody involved in PayIt.
Well said. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go to the last. I know we got 9 minutes left, so we're going to lightning round. And so the technical must-haves. Todd, you always probably feel like the lightning round is the technical stuff, right? So, but we've covered a lot of this ground already, so I think we'll be able to cruise through it. But I'd say PayIt. We've been pretty firm and open and said that open APIs should be open. APIs should be open and interoperable. That connects those things. It gives, and Todd, we've talked about this. It gives you optionality and avoids things like some lock-in. Another point that we want to make sure is like that when you're evaluating from a technology standpoint is that as your vendor, are the technology skills at least up as up to par as your technology team? Are they going to be able to walk together using John's language? And then just goes without saying that security should be in everything that we do together. And so with those things, just a little bit more about interoperability, Todd. I just want to hear you talk about it because I think you have a pretty good opinion on this. And does interoperable mean the same provider for the front and back end?
No, and that's that's the biggest I think misnomer, and it's difficult. And I did a little after John mentioned the questions were visible, so I snuck ahead. So as we're short on time, I kind of want to answer one of the questions or help kind of one of the questions with this answer is PayIt works, and it's my payment gateway of choice. I know that's kind of boiling it down to lowest common denominator there for what we're doing. Obviously, the API and the interconnectability of what we're doing with multiple platforms. But I saw the Parks and Rec was one of the questions. One of the issues that we're running into is it's the lack of flexibility on that provider's ability. So you have to remember sometimes they're making their money on the transaction. So you're getting the software at a very low rate and that ability to be able to do that. So you do end up with multiple payment gateways. I don't want to tell anybody that if I could, I'd implement PayIt everywhere because it's obviously our choice and our interaction's been great. But at the same time, it's not going to be we're not going to force it or shoehorn it into a situation where PayIt and my team can't be successful when we walk away from that partnership with that department. So. And then innovation, that's really the part that you guys bring to the table from a technical must-have for me is, you guys brought a lot of innovation in. I know everybody's got a chatbot now. ChatGPT is blowing up the internet. So, but you guys had that, long before most had that, that app and that ability to have that interaction. So those are the big things that kind of pop out for me. And then just to echo what Mike has said a couple of times is, there should be, our constituents have that expectation that their government delivers the same way that, you visit your doctor online, you get things shipped from the grocery store or Target or anywhere else, in a moment's notice, on your doorstep and Amazon and in those interactions. So the government should be able to deliver a like transaction. And one of the things that you guys brought to the table, which again, like Mike was saying, our other person wasn't able to deliver was a shopping cart feature. So, be able to pay multiple tax bills on one trip. We didn't have that from that vendor. And that's the difference. So, PayIt's a partner because they're looking to innovate and sit on top of that. There's a lot of payment gateways out there that are going to treat you very much like a vendor. And that's the difference for me.
Yeah, Todd, it makes me recall there was someone in the city of Toronto that uses some of our services, one for parking tickets. Someone literally tweeted out, why am I paying for my parking tickets like I'm shopping on Amazon? In a good way. She's LOLs and all the
absolutely
emojis, but she's like, this is amazing. Okay, I'm gonna go to John. I'm gonna go to you for the last question here before we turn over to some Q&A. But this all comes together. Finding the right vendor for you has components of the different topics we talked about today, and then making sure that there's that, finding the vendor that has skin in the game, and those cycles that you've talked about walking alongside you. So just to kind of bring this together, finding the right vendor to bring all those pieces together, what are the aspects you think are the most salient that you want to make sure that this audience leaves thinking about?
I think really what you should think about is that this is, even though this is shown as box 1, 2, 3, 4, we're all at different sections of those boxes, right? I'm primarily driving that user experience and adoption. I had others that helped me champion modernization. I had others that I would identify key requirements for tech vendors and also technical must-haves so that we fit our technology change group's idea of what I need to have for not only PCI compliance and cybersecurity, but also that the vendor I'm working with has Amazon Web Service, AWS. So we're talking about the highest level potential security that's out there. We know that the Department of Defense uses it, several other US departments, governmental departments use it. I can go home and I feel secure that the data and information is protected. It's not on my network. As Mike has pointed out, it is the public trust. How are we holding their money? How are we holding their information? Are they insecure providers? Those are the things that, yes, could get us walked out of the office pretty quickly if that public trust is destroyed. But when I look at that partner, it's that client team that was built around me. It is knowing who our support folks are. It is knowing that if I'm having an issue, I had our PayIt team came in January, and you have to be able to have honest conversations with folks. It's very simple. If I have a problem, it's understood, or there's clarifying questions asked, and we work through it. You know, that's what we do in our families, and that's kind of what you're going to need to do with a strategic partner. And so I don't want somebody to come in and set up a solution and then walk away. And, you know, then I'm having to navigate all the different calls to support. I'm having to navigate finding the right person there. No, and in this type of environment, I have not only a client manager, that manager has a support person to help us, so a team helps us. There's an implementation team, there's the tech team, there's the back-end support that helps our customers at PayIt. There's the front-end folks that we talk to in terms of even more sales reps. Jack, I can get a hold of Jack whenever. Fortunately, I've got him on text message. But I can get a hold of Mike Plunkett, who helps write up our contracts. I can get with anyone. I can, you know, and that's really, I think, the primary driver when I look at this is that my dad taught me to you do business with a handshake, and your word is your word. And that's what I don't want to have to fall back onto a contract. We work these things out. You know, if there's something that right with a contract, you work with your purchasing department, you work with the vendor or your strategic partner, and you create an addendum, and you find a way to work through the situation. It truly, truly, truly is that strategic partner that's going to be asking you, hey, what do you dream about? What do you think this is going to look like in 1, 3, and 5 years? And you can now have some conversation. We're not working from a position that we have to modernize immediately. Now we're thinking about, hey, we're in a good spot right now because 80% of our payments are electronic. Now we're sitting there go, hey, in 1, 3, or 5 years, how do I get to 90%? How do I innovate new services? How do I bring in new departments or departments that haven't been serviced in the past? How do I bring them into the fold to help them experience what we are, to help them with their own efficiencies, because we continue to be asked to do more with less. And that's a struggle I think a lot of us have faced in our careers, is that type of challenge, because we have finite resources. I can't go out and raise my prices just like a retailer can. I can only raise it based on our property tax millages. So yeah. It's sometimes a struggle, but you need that partnership.
I love the energy that we have in the room. Just the fact that these government leaders are so passionate, so invested in driving this change, And we have this wonderful audience of people that are distributed geographically and also distributed across the roles. We have IT people, we have non-IT people, elected officials versus treasury. It's great to hear different perspectives. So I feel like our panelists here, Adam and Jack, also come from two completely different sides. A very technical person being Adam, and not so technical, but very knowledgeable about the industry person being Jack. So let us start with the first question that we have. It was partially answered by John Glabinski. However, I think there's more to answer. So somebody from Georgia asked, so you spoke a lot about finding a vendor who will work with you side by side. What does it look like across the industry? Also, what does it look like for PayIt? And this person wanted to know if in their specific case, if they will have someone assigned to their account and spend time with them as they go through the process. Jack, let me point this over to you to start us with.
Sure. First of all, apologies to John Glabinski for cutting him off on all those really nice things he was saying. So anyway, thank you, John, in totality. I can, from the point of view I'll provide is what we see in here based on like incumbent providers that agencies worked with, and then they work with PayIt. So I think the part that at least that PayIt's disrupting in a way is that service model. I think a lot of us experience okay, great, the thing's installed, and here's the 1-800 number, and we'll let you know. We'll reach out when it's time for a renewal experience. And I expect that most people that are listening to this have had that sort of experience. What we have found makes a big difference, and you hear it in the words of the folks of John and Clark Hammond and Todd, that when you feel like you've got a name and a face and a person you can call or text, and or more than one, that makes a world of difference in terms of truly understanding what makes each individual agency unique. People do property taxes different across the US and Canada. People do DMV different, and court systems, everything else. So I'd say that would there be a contact assigned to their city? Absolutely, 100%. One of the things that I recall talking to another city up in the upper Midwest, different than Grand Rapids. I said, okay, this is the person that's going to be working with you all the time in client success, and they've got additional partners within PayIt that are here to help make you successful. And the response from that agency was, right now we just have an 1-800 number, and that just sort of makes me feel sad of that experience. Not something that we experience, and that person's there for that life of that relationship, and their mission is to make that relationship the best relationship that agency has ever had, and that's based upon delivering real outcomes and real results over that entire lifespan.
Adam, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and all that's really important. And I'll say from my perspective, and I'll try to not completely skew it towards PayIt, but just in general, it's a huge concern. And I've been in the public sector technology for 10 years at this point, and I can tell you it's not handled the same way elsewhere. And I mean, it's kind of funny that this question comes up, because literally this morning I was on a call with a prospective customer. And this is the first engagement. The immediate question that they asked was about this exact thing, because kind of like Jack said, they have a number, and their experience has been that they have a hard time getting a hold of somebody, and there's nobody that's specifically assigned to them. So before they got any further along about what we could do, they just want to know that somebody's going to be there for them. And I think that whenever you're engaging with any of these vendors, you have to kind of consider, what does that, services package look like? Who's helping you? What other things actually come with, the software you happen to be buying? And it's that relationship that's important. So.
That's fantastic. I know we're almost at the top of the hour, but I want to take one more question from Chelsea, because that one just spoke volumes to me about the issue that she's asking about being so pertinent. So she asked if any of you had any existing web payment platforms that PayIt replaced for where the business unit fought the replacement. So you had to sell it internally. And why this question stood out at me, I don't know if Chelsea is, local government or state government, but the recent NACIO CIO Priorities Report addressed that exact thing. They were asking CIOs for advice on how would you handle when you have agency owners of legacy solutions that you have to now convert, convince, and get to move to a different platform, something less antiquated, something that's supporting the initiative to modernize, right? So how, Adam or Jack, maybe Adam, you could get us started. What do we say to Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a real concern, right? Like, people are asking that, like there's polls and studies that are trying to answer that specific question. So, and I think that's part of the reason that, to go back to the topic that we're discussing today is why we put the buyer's guide together in part, right? And, it's one of the reasons that we address finding champions within your organization. And so, point people again to the handouts that are attached here because, that would be important. And, I'll let Jack chime in here too. I don't want to take all this.
Yeah, this is a great question, and probably from someone who is a champion for doing this. I'll tell you that from the experience we've had over the years in delivering these services, you've got that technology function, you've got it's called the financial function in many instances, and you got the business function. And I've seen instances where that champion emerges from any one of those three spaces, but requires that internal partnership with the other two. And especially when it comes from the I would say like the shared services, where it's like treasury like Treasurer Klemensky, or IT like Todd Shanley. They have their business partners. The biggest thing is understanding, first of all, like what's that current state from that like business unit. Why do they like whatever it is there today? Because many times, like you'll be surprised that just because it's already there and there's no work needed to like change a thing, and that fear of change, or just oh my gosh, there's work for a project to do a thing, and so they don't understand yet what the value is of what could emerge. We see that all the time. Hey, digital adoption, yeah, it's 5%, it's great, and not until you evaluate, you go, actually, could it be 45%? And the world is totally different. And that, when you actually think about even something as simple as that, you shift traffic. And when you shift traffic like that unburdens other aspects of those operations, because especially the in-person or mail-in or call-in operations, that's just really intensive. And if that can be elevated a little bit and unencumbered, then now you've got time to deliver even higher levels of service. You upskill teammates, et cetera. And so the net of all that, use the buyer's guide, but also start with understanding what does that individual like, or that you didn't like about that current service, or what do they wish they had? And then you can start to connect that to the potential outcomes versus, I think there's a fear of just, hey, this thing's going to change and you just got to deal with it. That becomes more of a compliance type of exercise versus really a transformation exercise.
And to close this, Jack, I will quote you actually in an interview with a digital experience leader from Boston, where a similar question was discussed. And the advice that she gave and you gave to the audience at the time was that you got to start with your vision. If everybody's aligned on the vision, then you remind people that this is where we're moving and this is why this is best, because this aligns with the vision. It's just, what is that vision, right?
Yeah. Reach out to any of those three people. I think they'd be happy to take an email or take a call.
So Chelsea, we will send you a follow-up if you want a connection, and you can interview either of the people on this webinar. You can ask your question directly and see what they come back with. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I know we're over. I appreciate those who stayed on. This has been a fantastic discussion. Thank you for making time for this program. And for those of you who are joining us next week, and make sure this is something that you continue doing for the next 3 weeks as we continue with this event, we will elaborate on the topic of moving towards the state of complete digital modernization. And we will explore another very tactical thing as to how do you modernize and how do you digitize your property tax collection? We'll have two fantastic speakers. They're extremely energetic, lots of positivity in how they talk about what they did in their states. We will have Maria Wells and Whitney Miller. Make sure that you're there, and I will see you next week. Thanks so much.